Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
And welcome back, everybody. Being in a relationship with somebody can be so wonderful, so joyful, so fulfilling. And then it can also be challenging, stressful. You wonder, should I be doing this? We're going to look at couples relationships today, and we're going to do that with the help of an amazing psychotherapist that works with everybody from children to seniors, and of course, couples and relationships. And she's back with us from Connecticut. Susie Engel is on the program. How you doing today?
I'm great, Steve. Thank you so much. How are you?
Good, good. I'm glad we're going to navigate this because these relationships, when they're good, they're great. When they're not, fill in the blank, however you want to, label it, if you will. I want to ask you, what is the foundation for a great relationship? And I'm thinking the answer is probably going to be what I always hear: communication. Is that really, really the baseline, the reality?
I think it's a great component, of course. But if we think about it, if we grew up not being heard or not being listened to, not being appreciated for your individual or my individual expression, then communication isn't just point blank communication. It's really about connecting. And connecting is about how am I, maybe if I'm the adult listening to a child, how am I listening for what's beneath the surface? Or how am I listening for what is somebody expressing through their behaviors? Because behaviors are a way of communicating too. So communication eventually is so important. But there's all this preliminary understanding of communication that needs to come first, if that.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm getting downloads in my mind right now where communication is important for sure, but it also depends on what you're communicating. If you had challenges in your childhood, I want to get to that in just a moment, you're communicating those challenges or not. In a perfect world, you just talk, you communicate, you're on the same level. Bliss. Everything is wonderful. That's not the reality. And my understanding and part of my journey, that we all have things that we deal with. We all have, like you just said, in your childhood, if you felt that you were not heard, you're taking that into your relationship. And that can be a challenge. You could have, we go hypothetical, you could have parents that got divorced, separation anxiety. You're always worrying, always have challenges there. Does it all go back to our childhood?
Well, the childhood experience is our foundation. The childhood experiences start these information networks, these real networks in our neurosystem. And I do think so. However, we were talking a little bit about attachment last podcast, and with enough of a foundation, we're not necessarily carrying every little tiny misstep that we've encountered. Instead, we may be carrying from our life experience a sense of stability. And that means within ourselves, we have security within ourselves. So if we're in a conflict with our partner or significant other or husband, wife, spouse, whatever that is, and we're in a conflict, it isn't as big a deal as if we were carrying damaged self-worth, wounded self-worth, hurt that hasn't been processed. So we have two different camps, or maybe a spectrum of camps, right? From low impact to high impact, or
Sure.
however we want to think about it. I like thinking about almost everything in a spectrum, but we don't have to be polarized. We don't have to be, we're either this or we're that. And I think that came up last time too, when we were talking. So if we have a series of events in our lives that are informing us, however we feel pretty good about ourselves, then we're going to feel okay if our partner or spouse acts a certain way one day, because we're not going to take it personally.
Mm.
If we're in a situation and I am not well processed or resourced with my knowledge of myself and knowledge of my strengths and perseverance and resilience, then if my spouse or partner um, maybe dismisses me, I might carry resentment. I might feel hurt. I might react in a big way that is maybe not called for, but because I haven't processed all this, it's logical.
Sure. Sure. Um, I feel everybody before they embark on a close relationship, marriage, long term, whatever it is, they should all go to therapy. That's just, I really mean that. A lot of things would be learned, a lot of things would be understood about yourself, and of course the other person. Um, Even right down to, let's say that somebody, let's say a woman, I'm just picking anything here. She didn't get a lot of attention from her father. Maybe he was gone. He wasn't around. Um, she needs that reinforcement, and maybe her partner, a male, is giving it to her, but not enough for her. Then what happens? She may wind up cheating and then continue to do that because that situation within her was never resolved. And now that man is dealing with it in the relationship.
And that's a beautiful hypothetical for us to discuss. Because what if that situation, what if uh, what if the father was away because the father needed to work, which is legitimate, admirable,
Mm-hmm.
and something that we have to understand. And what if this child was never really, maybe the situation wasn't explained, or maybe the mother felt um, burdened or felt neglected because her husband was away on the road working, which is again legit. And if the mother is also carrying this, which I would call unrecognized or unprocessed stress, then this child is a receptacle. And if this woman is a receptacle of all this stress and actually misinterpreting in from our perspective, but I wouldn't, if that were my client expressing the feelings she's expressing, it's not misinterpreting. And society has to be more careful about commenting on this. But if this woman who comes into adulthood is in a relationship and feels these triggers, these are unconscious reminders of, I missed my father when I didn't get enough. And so the relationship itself, even if the person doesn't cheat, if this is not processed, then nothing is going to be fulfilling or enough.
I have an example, and this is not a
Yeah.
hypothetical, and it's somebody I know the family. They were the couple. Like everybody wanted to be them until one day she said she wanted to get divorced. And, he and his kids blown away. Like, what? Traced it back that she had been cheating. And he's a friend. So I would talk with him and he was still like, I don't get it. I don't understand. Her father left the family abruptly. I think maybe she was 3, 4, something like that. So she did the same exact thing to her family. But wait, there's more. So she had been estranged from her father. When this couple got married, she reconnected with her father. Everything was great. They would all be together. I would be at the events with them. And her mother was with somebody else now. And they would even be happy and friendly. And everything was great. Then he got cancer, the father, and eventually passed away. The year he passed away is when she deployed that divorce. And there's an end to the story. And the end of the story is the man that she wound up with, if you see pictures of her father and him, it's him. It's a slightly younger version of her father. Uncanny. I saw the pictures. I'm like, is that when he was younger? No, that's the guy she's with. So ultimately, she needed to be with her father and went through many different men behind this guy's back. Wound up with the guy anyway. Wound up with a guy that looked just like her father. Talk about unresolved. I don't know if we call it a classic case, but there you go.
Yeah, that's a great example, and it's real life, so people can relate
Real.
to it. And I think also what you're highlighting is, and I don't mean to overcomplicate, but things are so layered, the patterns that are perpetuated consciously or unconsciously. Now, this is an example of unconsciously perpetuating the patterns, because around, at some point she had to leave. She had to leave, and for no good reason except for the fact that she hadn't processed how she was affected
Yeah.
by her father leaving, for whatever reasons the father left, for whatever reason the divorce happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel like this is bringing up a great aspect of couples and how couples interact. And if they understand the patterns of interacting and also the way they're communicating. Now let's go back to the communication.
Mm-hmm.
What are they communicating? So are we listening? Are we understanding beneath the surface? And there are only a few basic needs that people are looking for. It's like, comfort me when I need comfort, encourage me when I want independence, enjoy me for who I am, not for what I've earned. Not because
Yeah.
I got straight A's,
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Or
I'm
I make a lot of money.
$500,000 or
Right.
whatever
Right.
it is,
Yeah.
$5,
Mm-hmm.
but just enjoy me for who I am. And those are really just simple. But in couples, from young adulthood all the way up, you know, these are the patterns, whether healthfully or unhealthfully played out. And then when people start recognizing the patterns, like your example, then people can say, "Oh, I'm noticing a pattern," and then be able to say, "Is it about me?" And can my partner say, "Is it about me?" And then the two people, if they can say, "I have to look at myself within our relationship," and the other partner can say, "I can look at myself within our relationship," then their interactions are what we call dynamic
Mm-hmm.
changes.
And even in the hypothetical I gave doesn't mean that the husband in the situation was perfect, but at some point they got together, things worked. Maybe the woman thought he was a father figure feel for her, and that was okay at that time. And maybe they grew apart, and then that's where she started cheating, and then looking, I need a man that's going to replace my dad. I don't know I'm doing it, but that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing. That being said, I've heard the 7-year itch in relationships, and we kind of giggle at that, but this is what I heard. I know, but I did too until I heard this, that many of us reevaluate our lives every 5 years or so, whether it's a relationship or just our situation. And it typically takes 2 years for us to act on it. So that would be the 7 years. And I'll tell you, I traced it back in my life, and every 7 years, there was an event or a pinnacle moment situation. Not a good one. I'm not talking about bought a house, although I did buy a house, in 7 years apart, coincidence or not. But it was in steps of around 7. That's what I've heard. I put it together. I've experienced. What are your thoughts?
I like it. I mean, I don't know.
There's no science here. Trust me.
Oh, yeah, I thought there was science behind it. I was like, I don't know the studies about this, but it is interesting. Listen, I think what we could allude to in terms of research, because basically, that's what we have to, not basically, we need to go by research, might be something to do with developmental stages. There's early childhood, there's middle childhood, there's early adolescence, there's middle and late adolescence, there's young adulthood, there's adulthood, there's late adulthood, so maybe that's true, that if somebody really did some research, maybe there is some research out there. The other thing is, I think it's true. If we look at developments in our life, we do mature. We do understand ourselves differently. We do figure other goals in life that you're alluding to.
Mm-hmm.
And then I absolutely agree that once we identify, even have a great idea for a growth in our lives, it takes time. And you're saying maybe it takes 2 years to implement or make happen.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm going to ask you a question. Let's go. I didn't mean to cut you off, but let's go. Let's work on this. Are you a different person in many regards than you were 5 years ago? Take time to answer, process, think.
I'm not that different. No, I'm not different.
Interesting.
I think I'm a different person from an earlier time in my development. I think I've had more ups and downs during adolescence. And then I think that I was at a baseline in like childhood.
Okay.
Except for some events that may have affected me, but not really. But then adolescence, I think I had some ups and downs, but I think that then I came into myself. Maybe I came into myself in a gradual way. Oh, you're good, Steve, because you ask like these personal. I remember the first podcast we had. You were asking me about, describe a trauma you've experienced. But I think that in maybe my 30s, I put it together, and I think I can't remember, Eddie Murphy. He loved his 30s, and he said because I was really able to understand all the growth experiences and maybe mistakes. I'm not quoting him. I'm just telling you the gist of, and really grow from this stuff. And I do feel like throughout my 30s, I came into my own. But am I a different person than I was? No, not at all. And am I a different person today than I was 5 years ago, 10 years ago?
Interesting.
Unless I'm just a better version, because I do think that life just gets so much better. Oh my gosh.
I'd have to think, yes, better, but better can also be different.
Mm-hmm. But it's the same person. I mean, I think that I've known myself. And also, don't forget to do this work. And I would recommend all therapists really delve into themselves before they set out to do this professional work with clients. I felt an obligation to work through my stuff.
I totally gotcha. And I know some therapists, they got stuff going on. And I don't judge anybody, but some of the things they tell me that even somebody I met recently, she's in a complicated relationship, and I'm thinking, sort that out. You're a therapist, but that's not, I don't know the full details, so I can't even judge there. And I guess when I asked you that question, Sandy, about being a different person. Um, I feel I'm different in some regards than I was 5 years ago. Would I say 5 years before that? I don't know. Probably not. It all depends on, how life takes us, but there's differences. Yeah. As a friend of mine recorded a song, and I love this piece of the lyrics, and it says a lot. And I think maybe it's what you're saying. The core is still the same. The core is still the same, but there's a few more cracks there in my shell.
I like that. I like that very much. And when you're speaking of this, I also agree with you. Are we different? I would say, are we more evolved?
Okay.
And the cracks in the shell I like because it's like when people say you have a wall up and there's a chink in the wall, this is good. But there's all sorts of ways for people to understand this. But I do resonate with what you're saying. The core may be the same, but are we different? Yes. Am I a different person? No. Am I evolved?
Evolved. All right.
Yes.
I like that. Yeah, I think that's the best description. It really is.
I like
Yes.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're always evolving. Have you evolved a little bit more than maybe 5 years before? Maybe, maybe not. And I
Doesn't it?
believe,
Yeah.
and we're out of time, but I want
Oh my gosh, that was so fast.
almost. Um, are we take this for what it is? Few more cracks there in my shell. We're all broken, aren't we? We all have, I always didn't want to say that, the words broken, but we've been through things that have uh, going through stuff in your childhood broke us a little bit, but beautifully broken.
Oh, I love that. It's that whole we're perfect with our imperfections,
Okay,
or
fair
like the
enough.
Japanese custom of taking a broken plate
I,
and gluing it with the gold. I don't remember the name of it.
I know exactly what you're talking about, and I can't
Oh,
remember
it's
the name
just
either.
so
Yes.
philosophical.
Yeah.
Like show off the flaws. I mean, and then we were talking about vulnerability in an earlier conversation. All this comes to fruition, but are we broken? Uh, just think about being in high school and all the literature we were required to read. And it was all about lost innocence and hardship and journey. And it's just quite amazing, to understand the literature they forced us to read and see the beauty in that is informative to us now.
When I look back, half of the and here's the joke of it all. I talk for a living, but I didn't embrace English when I was in high school, like Macbeth. Mr. Brennan was one of my teachers, I don't know, 11th grade or whatever. And he always pushed that book. I can't remember what that book's about. And looking back, I wish I embraced that kind of stuff. But then Mr. Stroud came along and he was kind of a hippie, but he was the editor or the advisor of the school newspaper. And I wanted to draw cartoons. So
Oh,
that's what I wanted to do, be creative.
I
Macbeth
love
didn't
it.
give me the opportunity to do that.
Beautiful, beautiful. And anyway, I would recommend everybody going to see Macbeth or
Hmm.
see Shakespeare in the theater because it's transforming.
It's interesting. One thing I will say, talk to your younger self. I regret when I was in college not taking psychology. I actually canceled the course. And I have such a fascination with the human mind and how we think and, how we are, what we are, and how we got to be where we are.
Yeah, so you're doing your college course through podcasts.
And my teacher is Susie Engel. and that's the truth. How do we find you, Susie? If somebody is working on their relationship, needs some guidance, what's the best way to find you?
Well, the best way is to go to my website and then there's a contact request. So it's my name, Susan, Susan, Engel, Engel hyphen LCSW, my title, licensed clinical social worker. So Susan Engel hyphen
.com.
Yes. Thank
Wonderful talking with you. I guess the takeaway is never stop evolving. And we're beautifully broken. It's okay. Appreciate you and all your insight. Looking forward next time we talk.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the mytuner-radio, onlineradiobox, and simpleradio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.